For joining Strat Xtra. I'm your trusted advisor, Hester with Stratosphere Networks, and I have a special guest with me today, Andy Coan with Splice Communications. How you doing today, Andy?
Doing great, Zach. Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. Thanks for joining us today. So we've been working a lot with your team as a managed IT services provider with our clients, and we just wanted to get a little bit of background. Can you tell us the story of Splice from your launch in 2002 to today, and how have you guys evolved over the years?
Sure, I'd be happy to. Started the company nearly 20 years ago, and when I first founded the company, I started with three partners. And initially, we started out as a telecom reseller, focusing on data services. So we were a very large reseller of dedicated internet access and private line services and MPLS through Verizon. And over the years, we grew that partnership, the wholesale partnership, to about 100 carriers. So even though we were buying wholesale, we were a switchless reseller, but we controlled everything. We built it, we collected it, we supported it, and we grew that business very rapidly. We had about a 10-year run where we just took off. And then after about 10 years, the market started to change a little bit. The carriers were sort of no longer interested in supporting the wholesale model. We found ourselves competing a lot with the enterprise side of the business from our carrier partners. So we quickly started evaluating other business lines. And a couple of years after that, so about year 12, we did a business model pivot. And we sold our assets, our customer base, to GTT, and we hung on to the Splice name, and we came out as kind of a startup, really, a brand new company providing managed services. So now today we specialize in outsource IT services and professional services. And so we no longer can provide or no longer wish to provide circuits and internet access, but we can still support that. And I can go into that later on with our service stack.
Yeah, that makes sense. And that's actually kind of funny. We got our start in the telecommunications space as well. So we started out as an Avaya business partner, so selling and installing Avaya phone systems. And then our customers were asking us to do more IT work for them as things kind of transitioned more into the voice over IP world. So that's when we entered the IT space and we started building out our managed services program as well, and then transitioned to cybersecurity as well from there. So
Oh,
it's
interesting.
funny that you guys got your start that way also.
Yeah, yeah. It
So
sounded like we read the tea leaves at the same time.
exactly. Um, what are your guys' primary goals as an IT service provider today?
Well, when you think about the addressable market out there, which is vast, I believe it's nearing 100 billion when you look at professional services and IT services. So our goal is to uh, you know serve the IT space. We call it the Splice Way. If you look at our website, you'll see it's called the Splice Way, and it extends to our vendors and our employees and our customers. And basically, what the Splice Way is we exist to serve, and true service requires a humble heart with accountability. And our focus is to urgently deliver excellence to those that we serve. And so we're honored and dedicated to serve our clients, and we look at that and take that very seriously. And we partner with um, whether you're a vendor or a customer or employee or the community at large. We do so with consistent and measurable value every day, and that's our core focus.
Yeah, that's great. Actually, again, kind of how we started as a firm, Steve and Kevin, the two partners at Stratosphere Networks, there wasn't a ton of good Avaya service providers out there. So we started the company, with our focus on customer service for our customers as well from that standpoint. So glad to hear it.
Yeah, yeah, it's very
What is
important.
what is your guys' ideal client in terms of size, industry? Is there, a focus that Splice has from that standpoint?
That's a great question. When we first set out, more than 8 years ago, probably about 10 years ago, to become an MSP, we weren't really sure. We knew that the addressable market must be huge, just not just from a dollar or revenue standpoint, but just because every company needs IT. So we're not a vertical play. It's very horizontal for us. We provide services across all sectors. And in terms of the ideal client type, again, it doesn't matter industry specific, but a customer that's got either multiple locations or anywhere between, say, 200 all the way up to 3,500 users. I mean, that's kind of a sweet spot for us. And we have several customers that have over 10,000 users, and we can service them just fine. But again, if you look at just the sweet spot, somewhere in the 3,000 end user spot is really good for us.
Yeah, that makes total sense because when you start to get kind of above that 3,000 level, they start to have, IT teams in-house that are kind of managing everything. So it
Yeah,
makes
yeah,
total sense.
exactly. And it's amazing though, depending on the sector. So if you look at retail, for example, that's where we have users that exceed 10,000 because the retail is heavily dependent on IT services, and more they're outsourcing that. And so we've looked over the years, we've steadily increased, or I should say, moved up market to the point where our average deal size sits at around 12,500 and growing. If you look at our pipeline, just the sheer number of deals that exceed even 15,000 in monthly recurring fills our pipeline, where several years ago we would top out at about 6,000. So we're seeing an upward trend.
Yeah, totally. We love to hear that, obviously.
Yes.
Um, there are, a ton of managed services providers out there. We get that as formerly providing our own managed services in-house. It's a very competitive market, obviously. How do you guys stand out from other MSPs that are in the space today?
Yeah, another good question. There are a lot of MSPs, as you know. For one, we're a global MSP, so that instantly puts us in a different category than most MSPs, as many of them are regionally based or mom and pops, if you will. Not to say that there aren't any good MSPs out there. We just kind of built something that's a little bit unique in that we're global, but no other MSP really combines the types of services that we focus on. And so, even though that there's some customers that provide some overlapping services, when you look at our background in carrier, for example, we have a service, telecom carrier management service that ties in our old customer service knock in Utah, which we hung on to after the transaction. And so we rolled out a service that allows customers to outsource the provisioning and management and ongoing ticketing and escalation of telecom services, even though we are not providing the circuit. So we get an LOA from a customer that wants to outsource those services to us. And then if there's an issue with their circuit, we can troubleshoot that proactively, especially if we're also providing NOC services or management of the router. If we see a flap on the router, we instantly open up a trouble ticket with the carrier simultaneous to troubleshooting that router. And then if we determine that it's a router issue, then we can close out the ticket with the carrier. But in that instance where it is a carrier issue, we've already gotten way ahead with troubleshooting that portion of the circuit.
Yeah, that's great. I'm sure every single IT person out there can empathize with having issues with carrier problems and internet
Indeed.
outages and you know so that's something that's definitely, a differentiator of you guys. So that's great to hear. Um, Obviously, the big topic of 2022 and upcoming for 2023 is cybersecurity is, top of mind for every IT leader and business leader out there. What is Splice doing to protect their clients' data?
Yeah, no, that's a great point. Cybersecurity is still the top priority for just about every company. There's so many things that can occur, as you well know. When it comes to cybersecurity, that's not a focus of ours. We do some, we do provide some endpoint security, but when it comes to cybersecurity, we just made the decision. We did evaluate it, but we made the decision not to get into cybersecurity. It's a completely different skill set, and we decided that really we'll let the cybersecurity experts deal with that. And if our customer, because we get asked that all the time, if a customer is interested in cybersecurity, we have plenty of partners that we're happy to refer them to. But we like to stay in our lane. We're a service provider. We're focused on desktop support as a service, and our professional services and our NOC, device and infrastructure management. If we just stay in that lane, um, we just feel that we'll let the experts, stick to the cybersecurity space.
Totally agree with that statement. Staying laser focused on what you guys are good at it makes total sense. And, there's so many great cybersecurity companies out there today that are doing great things in the space that makes total sense to me.
Yeah,
So,
and companies typically split that out anyway. They'd rather not put all their eggs in one basket. So it really is not a difficult conversation to have with a customer. And at the end of the day, they usually like to divide those services up.
yeah, totally. What kind of ROI do most businesses see from your guys' services?
That is a great question. Get asked a lot, especially for companies that haven't fully adopted the outsource model.
Yep.
Although the trend is up. I mean, from when we first started to now, the adoption rate has just skyrocketed. But there's a huge savings in outsourcing, both hard and soft dollar. We estimate that for every 70 or so employees, you need an IT tech for support. So depending on how many employees you have, that requires IT desktop support. You need to figure, that tech salary. If somewhere in California where I'm at, that's anywhere from $80,000 to $100,000 and up, plus benefits. In addition to tool sets, ticketing systems, the entire infrastructure is quite expensive. Versus outsourcing that to a company like ours, it's a real easy calculation. So when we're doing a scope of work and we have a full understanding of our customers' existing employee base, we can actually show them an ROI. We just do the math for them and show them, okay, if you're committing to this number of users or tickets, this is what it would be on Splice, versus if you did it in house to manage and support your existing infrastructure, this is what it would cost you. So you're talking about anywhere from 30 to as high as 60% savings by outsourcing.
Totally. And then on top of that, you have a team of experts versus one IT person that might be a generalist in something and that's not an expert in everything, especially when we're talking about different things like cloud services,
Precisely.
moving to AWS, moving to Azure, the public cloud providers from that standpoint. Maybe they're familiar with on-prem servers and server infrastructure on site, or
Sure.
maybe they're really good at networking or help desk services. But generally speaking, that person's an IT generalist and is not good at all of those things. So there's a huge
Well,
value
that
into
that's a
into
great
moving
point.
to it. Yeah.
That's a great point, Zach, because when you have a competitive marketplace like the one we have now, the average tenure of an IT tech is about 2 years. And typically, that IT person, when he or she leaves, they take the knowledge with them. So outsourcing it to a company like Splice, we maintain a knowledge base. It's totally yours. If for whatever reason down the road you decide to build a solution yourself, or you leave, we allow you to take that knowledge base with you and transfer it to the next person or internal source. And so that's the other soft dollar value when you think about outsourcing versus building it. You're going to be able to have a trusted MSP that's going to grow and scale with you.
Yeah, it makes total sense to me. And having that team of experts at your fingertips, depending on whatever project you're looking for in the future to kind of help budget and help plan
That's right.
and, strategize with you, it's important to have a trusted partner like a Splice. So, can you
Indeed.
can you share a story about how Splice's services have benefited one of your clients? Like maybe there's something
Sure.
that you guys are especially proud of, or a win that you're especially proud of with a client.
Yeah, no, thanks for asking. We have a lot of interesting and great wins. I've got about five favorites. I'll share one. But as you know, in this business, every opportunity is a custom solution. There's not a one size fits all. So there are a lot of variables that go in. Um, One customer in particular that is just a great story, great business case. It was a small startup, a cloud-based company, headquartered in Palo Alto at the time. They started out when we first got engaged with them. They had about 60 employees. They had a ton of engineers who were doubling as IT support, but it was taking their focus away from building their business. And they had really no single knowledge base, and they were hiring like crazy. They just got through a big round of funding, so they were onboarding people rapidly. So you know, within a year's time, so they engaged us initially to support their employee base desktop support. So we're providing remote desktop support for about 60 users, and then within a year, that 60 turned into 100, and then 120, and 3 years later, they've grown to around 600 or so employees, and we're supporting all of them. And that's grown. The scope grew along with the growth that they experienced. So we're providing new user onboarding for them. They outsource all that to us. We have a lab in Sacramento where we procure their hardware. They're using Mac devices, but we have customers using all PCs, Macs, and the like. And we'll procure that hardware for them and pre-config their devices so that when a new user or new employee starts, that device gets shipped out to that employee day one, so they have all their permissions and their configs in place. And then that scope, and one of the reasons why it's my favorite is um, we've grown. They've grown with us. We also support their Office 365 migration and ongoing support for their Office 365 suite. And it's just one of those accounts where they've come to trust us. And so anything IT, they come to us first. We get essentially first right of refusal on all their business. And it's just been a great partnership. They've been there for us and we've been there for them. So that's
Yeah,
one of my favorites right there.
I love it. Yeah, I love it. It's, you just explained everything great right there. You guys are their trusted partner. So the relationship works two ways with clients. So there's trust your way and then there's trust from them. So it's something that I
Absolutely.
love to hear. Are there any common IT mistakes that you notice people making that business leaders should watch out for?
Yeah, I mean, in this business, it's easy to make mistakes. First of all, staying up on technology is a really hard thing to do, and if you don't have a team dedicated internally to make sure you're on all the latest and greatest and cutting edge technologies, it could pass you by. But the biggest mistake I think goes to the kind of the capex versus the opex model. And what I mean by that is, with an opex model, and I'm referring to what our model is, and that is by outsourcing it, you turn it into an operations expense versus building out an expensive infrastructure that you may or may not be able to capitalize on. And so that's, I think, one of the biggest mistakes some organizations make, thinking that they should build versus buy. And you get so much more flexibility when you outsource because, let's say, for example, you engage us on a minimum number of users, and then the following year you have some, like we're in now, a little recession, and you have to reduce the number of end users that you have. Well, if you follow the capex model, you built this infrastructure, you're paying for it. But if you're with Splice, we can, retool you, reset you on to the appropriate level, and provide you with that flexibility to make sure that you always have the most cost-effective solution while remaining super efficient in your business and in your IT management.
Great. I love that answer. As you kind of mentioned, obviously with things that there's going, that there's a recession that's already kind of happening right now, and, economic uncertainty and everything that's happening, and some other things that are going on in the tech space. What's new with Splice that clients should know about for 2023? And do you guys have any sort of, different plans for 2023 as well?
Well, yeah, we're always, we've got a roadmap. One of the things that we've invested in most recently, well, we've got two major projects going on. One, the easiest one is we're about to close on a 10,000 square foot building that we've been building out in Sacramento the past several months, and we'll probably be ready to move in, I would say, 3 weeks. It'll be done. And basically it's a lab to support the growth. We've experienced immense growth in the area of new user onboarding and warehousing of equipment. So customers that want to warehouse gear can do that for a nominal monthly fee, as well as customers that want to outsource their new user onboarding and hardware procurement through us. They can do that. And it's especially good in this type of environment where there's the logistical challenges that are occurring and have plagued us for the last several months. Several customers have placed, pre-orders of hardware or laptops, I should say, so that and then have us configure them so that they sit there in our warehouse and are ready to go when a new employee starts. And that's really key, because if you waited to do it on a as higher basis, you're never going to get those devices in on time. So we've really kind of addressed that issue and that concern for a lot of customers. And we're excited to open that 10,000 square foot facility. It's state of the art, secure, be in a cage, be, dual access, security cameras everywhere. And so it's really going to be, we're already looking at plans to expand because the demand is already looking like it's going to exceed that space. So we're already looking at other locations to expand that part of the business. And then the other thing that we're very excited about is we're in the middle of building our own ITSM, or ticketing system. One of the big challenges with providing desktop support is being able to pull reports either from the customer's existing ticketing system or some other vendor. And we in the past, we were leveraging the ticketing systems of our partners. We decided to invest that money into building our own. We'll be able to integrate into most every system out there. And then the advantage for the customer is they'll have access through a portal and a dashboard to real-time analytics, any type of reporting you would possibly need for statistics and analysis will be available through this ITSM that we're building. So we're really excited about that, and again, that'll be ready probably early Q1.
That's awesome. I love to hear that because, like during the process, a lot of our clients are asking us how we can communicate better with them, and having a ticketing system that you guys own and manage, makes it a lot easier to communicate with your clients. So makes
Indeed.
makes a lot of sense that you guys are developing your own, and that's awesome. And
Thank you.
to your first point too, I think, the biggest frustration for a lot of people, especially that are in the IT industry right now, is around hardware procurement. Obviously right now with the microchip shortage and all of that other stuff that has been kind of plaguing the industry right now, it's been hard to get any sort of answers from distribution or manufacturers around any sort of equipment. So
Yeah.
it doesn't put us in the best place when we're talking to our customers, but obviously everyone is kind of aware of the challenges that are out there with the supply chains and everything else that's going on. So
They sure are. They sure are. And that's why, we've got more than a handful of customers who they'll come up with their budget and kind of, give us their projections on new users that or new employees that are coming on. And then they'll cut us a PO to go ahead and pre-order a bunch of their devices, and then we'll warehouse them for them so that we're ahead of the logistical challenges that we're plagued with. And so, for those companies that it's really critical to have on-demand devices, we're a perfect solution for.
yep. Great, great. So I got to ask you this, just, as a whole, from an industry standpoint, what are your predictions for 2023 for the IT world?
Yeah, you can get into trouble when you start predicting, but one of the things that is very apparent, we believe companies are going to continue for one reason or another, in a up market or down market, doesn't matter, to outsource their IT. In fact, we saw a 20% increase in overall IT spend in 2022 from last year, and I think by 2026, if you follow the industry as closely as I do, it's projected to be well over 80%. So what's great about that for Splice is if you look at the entire pie chart, if you will, of IT and professional services, help desk, IT, printing services, hosting, security, all of that, we provide just over 36% of those addressable services. So we think we're positioned very well to support and take advantage of those opportunities. So in terms of predictions, I think we're going to see nothing but growth, steady growth for the next decade.
Yeah, no, that makes total sense, especially with economic uncertainty right now. People that we're working with, companies that we're working with, business leaders, they're looking at ways of cutting costs. And, as you mentioned earlier in the podcast here, the cost of an in-house IT person or having an in-house IT team compared to outsourcing it when you have a team of experts, it just makes so much more sense that way. And that's just a way that you can, contain costs from your IT standpoint alone. And then, there's so many other different ways, which, would be a podcast for a different way to help contain costs, especially when, economic uncertainty is happening right now. So,
Indeed, indeed. And, I think one of the things that many companies, especially ours, learned from, the pandemic. I mean, even when the economy is roaring, something like that could occur.
yep,
And, we were forced to shift, and many other companies did too. But we really actually, luckily and thankfully, thrived in that environment, because when people got sent home to work remotely, they had to figure out, well, how are we going to support those remote users? And that was a silver lining in all that, because we were a perfect solution for that instance. And so, when unpredictability happens, outsourcing is a great model. when predictability happens, we're also a good model too, because you could predict what your CapEx costs would be versus your OpEx costs. And, outsourcing is OpEx. So it just makes sense for a lot of businesses, whether it's a up economy or down economy.
Great, great. Well, Andy, I think that brings us to kind of the end of things. I want to thank you so much for your time and thank you for joining us today. And thank you for listening to Strat Xtra, and stay tuned for our next episode.
It was my pleasure, Zach, and thanks for being a great partner. Appreciate it.
Absolutely. We hope to work with you guys more in the months and years to come. Thanks, Andy.
Look forward to that. Bye-bye.